White Noise by Don DeLillo, winner of the National Book Award, and effectively the book which put Don DeLillo on the literary map, which catapulted DeLillo into the vanguard of American writers. Now, historically, I have not necessarily been the biggest fan of Don DeLillo. I've read several of his books, although I guess it's kind of odd that I haven't read this book, the perhaps quintessential Don DeLillo book until now, but c'est la vie, I suppose. But like I say, I've read several of his books, and while there are elements of his work which I certainly do admire, such as the prose, I think he is a phenomenal prose stylist, like just in terms of the quality of the writing alone, I think he is fantastic. But the characters in his books, well, they sometimes, or a lot of the time, sound odd to me at least. They sound like aliens impersonating humans, or at least it seems that way to me. I don't think I've ever encountered a human being in real life that speaks like a character in a Don DeLillo book. But beyond that, the subject matter of his books, the themes of his books, sometimes are just kind of edgy. It's just kind of edgy. Like the whole opening sequence of Underworld, I swear, is like one of the cringiest things I have ever read in my life. The triumph of death and all these famous people and whatnot. It's just so heavy-handed, and it's so kind of full of itself. You can feel the pomposity of it just kind of straining at the seams. It's just so freaking cringy to me. Even though there is stuff in that book that I like, my overall reaction to DeLillo's body of work, or what I have read of it, has been mixed at best. Although I will say that Libra is a fantastic book. I think Libra is like a true knockout. I wouldn't criticize much about that book. If anything, that book's a knockout. But like I say, overall, my reaction to DeLillo's work is kind of, like I say, mixed at best. But this book, White Noise, again, the kind of quintessential DeLillo novel and the one that really made him as a writer, I have to say my reaction to it is decidedly positive. This book really is a masterpiece. I'll say that right now, not necessarily being the biggest fan of DeLillo, or at least not prior to reading this book. White Noise actually may stand to change that, because this book really is a great book, and I think that it certainly merited the National Book Award, which it won. I think it really is a crackerjack product, and as per usual, I will try to express my thoughts as best I can regarding it. So, what is the story of White Noise? White Noise is kind of a busy book. It has a lot of elements at play. It's kind of doing a lot of things. It is at once a satire of consumer culture and academia. It is also something of an existential lament, and as well a study in thanatophobia. So the story of White Noise takes place, I think, contemporarily with when it was written, which was in the 1980s. And it is narrated by one Jack Gladney. Jack Gladney is a professor who lives in a seemingly idyllic little American town, and he teaches a course called Hitler Studies. Again, this book is something of a satire of academia, and the course that Jack teaches in this book, Hitler Studies, is kind of poking fun at the kind of useless academia trope. I guess even back in the 1980s, that was kind of becoming a thing of colleges offering classes and courses in subjects which are just completely useless and serve no real purpose overall. And Jack is a professor of one such course. He teaches a course in Hitler, just the kind of the life of Adolf Hitler, which probably not going to land you a good job majoring in that, but like I say, it's satire. So Jack is married to a woman named Babette, and she is like his fourth or fifth wife. They have a passel of children from previous marriages, when they all, it's kind of a blended family, an extended blended family. And Jack is very deathly afraid, pun intended, of death. He has a very serious anxiety about dying. And this is only exacerbated when their town is struck by a disaster where a rail car ruptures, which releases a large amount of some kind of toxic chemical into the atmosphere, and they have to get evacuated. This is referred to in the book as the airborne toxic event. There's also a band named the Airborne Toxic Event, which probably should go without saying, took their name from that section of this book. But the airborne toxic event serves to heighten Jack's dread of death, especially because he is exposed to the toxic chemicals, and his demise is presumably going to be hastened by this because uh, his health has been impacted by this. So now Jack is extra worried about his impending death. But Jack also discovers that his wife Babette is taking, or has been taking, a mysterious experimental drug called Dilar, and that she has actually been sleeping with a man who provides her this drug. And this drug is a treatment for the fear of death. It is supposed to alleviate one's anxiety regarding their termination. And so Jack is kind of jealous in a twofold way. He is jealous because she two-timed him and slept around with this other guy, and he kind of wants revenge against this mysterious unknown drug dealer. But he's also jealous of her because of the drug itself, because he wants some of that sweet, sweet Dilar to take away his fear of death. So eventually, Jack discovers who the dealer is, and he sets out to kill the dealer and abscond with a lot of the goods. But it ends in kind of a scene of black comedy as they shoot each other, and then Jack ultimately returns home, and that's kind of just how the book ends. So that is the plot, over a kind of an overview of the plot of White Noise. So let's talk about the technical qualities of the story, because like I say, this is really a fantastic book, and I, having not been heretofore a big fan of Delillo, I will readily admit that this book really is a masterpiece, and I think it did deserve that National Book Award. The writing is great. Like I said, even though haven't been the biggest fan of Delillo, his prose has never been what has bothered me. He has always been a fantastic writer in the strictest sense of that word in my eyes. And this book is no exception. The writing in White Noise is very strong. It's very good, very artful. He has some really good turns of phrase and some really good metaphors in here. It's definitely on a prose level, just an impeccable product. So nothing to complain about the writing. Now the characters, well, as I said, the characters in DeLillo books speak oftentimes, or so it seems to me at least, in rather inhuman ways. And there's a lot of that in this, but I don't think it's quite as bad. Like there's like in Mao 2, that book, there are some conversations in that book that sound, again, like aliens impersonating humans. There's some of that in White Noise, but it's not that bad. But again, there's still some of that arch dialogue that's just a little bit too literary for normal conversation. It feels off in a way at times, but it is funny, and the humor of the book goes a long way towards assuaging that in my eyes, because White Noise is a satire and it is something of a black comedy, and it succeeds in that endeavor, I think, because there are numerous instances in this book where you might get a chuckle out of it, because it is a very humorous book. There's a real quality of humor about it, and I think that goes a long way towards uh, alleviating any issues I might have regarding the dialogue and how artificial it sounds at times. So the characters, it's really just Jack, mainly because he is the narrator. It's first person, but I suppose he is a relatively well developed character. We definitely do get a real sense, a very heavy sense of his death anxiety because he just kind of goes on and on about it, and it like absorbs his entire thought process. He just can't get it out of his head, especially after he is exposed to the airborne toxic event. The secondary characters, though, aren't that strong. Babette is, I guess, the most prominent secondary character, and she has a personality. I'll say that. She's kind of similar to Jack in a way because they both fear death so much. But it's there's not too terribly much depth, I didn't think, at least in as regards the secondary characters. But again, in a first person book, I suppose that's excusable. So overall, as far as the characters go, it's good enough for me anyway, especially or at least for a Delillo book, it's good enough for me. So it gets it over the line in that respect. Now, as to the story and the story's thematic concerns, it's White Noise really is a book that kind of has a lot going on, and it's pretty deft in the way that it handles its themes. I think it kind of juggles some things, but it all comes out pretty well in the end, I think. So, like I said, it is a satire not only of academia, of Jack being this kind of this professor who is kind of removed from the grit of day-to-day life, because Jack kind of remarks is the book over the course of the book that he doesn't really know how to do anything like with his hands, like fix anything. He's kind of useless outside of the classroom, and he teaches a useless course which is just basically pretty frivolous. It has serves no purpose really. And so I think it succeeds in its satirical endeavors in the academic sense, but it is also a satire of consumer culture. And the consumer culture is, I think, the white noise of the title. Because when the characters go shopping, like the supermarket is depicted as like almost like a cathedral. It's like a religious experience when they go in the supermarket, and it's and all the products, all the produce, and all the goods. It's all portrayed in this kind of like heightened fashion to where it feels more than just a simple shopping trip. It's like a religious rite that they're performing. And like I say, the consumerism is the white noise, because DeLillo is kind of making the point that like we distract ourselves with a bunch of kind of like marketing and kind of this hyper consumerist culture that we live in. It is white noise kind of that distracts us from our impending demises and the more pressing, more vital concerns of life. And it's a pretty good trick that DeLillo does throughout the book, where he'll just randomly insert products and names of various items and things, that he'll just randomly insert that in the middle of paragraphs. Again, that's the white noise coming out, that it's always there in the background. You don't hear it until it stops, in other words, and that's kind of, again, the satirical element of it at play. But also it is, again, a study in thanatophobia, the fear of death. And it's odd that, and it's actually mentioned in this edition, in the introduction to this book, that it's not a very classically religious book. Like, what I mean is, usually when people fear death, that usually has religious connotations. Like what happens after death, what happens when we die, is there a heaven, is there a hell, that kind of thing. Is there karma? Am I going to be reincarnated? Like, people's fear of death it's not really so much that people fear death, it's they fear that what may or may not come after death, I think. And so normally in a book concerned with death and the fear thereof, you would think that it would be very concerned with religion and faith and piety and such, but it's really not. In fact, it's very much, as is stated in the introduction, it's kind of like a post-Christian world, a post-religious world that the book takes place in. Like, there's mention of religion, but it barely factors in when it comes to the story. In fact, at the end of the book, after Jack shoots the the drug dealer guy that his wife was sleeping with, he has a change of heart, and so he takes him to a hospital, seemingly a Catholic hospital run by nuns. But then he finds out that the nuns are actually atheist nuns that don't really believe in God or anything, and it's just like a sham, a facade that they perpetrate to actually help the more open non-believers in society, because it's kind of an interesting discussion where he says like the atheists, the non-believers need the believers, the faithful. They kind of play off of each other. One kind of complements the other, that kind of thing. It's kind of an interesting discussion, really. And again, it just highlights the fact that religion and faith does not really play any kind of role in this story or in the lives of its characters. So it's very much an agnostic kind of death anxiety, but and there's really no resolution to it. Again, you're just going to have to deal with it. I guess that's the thing to be taken away here, is that death is coming for us all, and you can't avoid it forever. So that's kind of the main gist thematically of White Noise. So to rate White Noise, how would I rate White Noise? I would give this book an A. I would give this book a solid A. It is that good. It really did, I think, deserve that National Book Award. It might not get a full A plus for me because it does still have some of the Delillo trappings. My personal hangups regarding Delillo's work, especially as regards the characters and the way they speak, which is very arch and faux at times and unnatural. But other than that, I think this is definitely one of Delillo's most successful works, and I would say that I'm probably not alone in that belief, given that this book won the National Book Award and did, pretty much make DeLillo as a writer. So yeah, I think that White Noise really is a masterpiece. I think it may be DeLillo's finest book. I don't know though. Libra is a damn fine book. It really is. So I would say that it's kind of a toss up for me between White Noise now and Libra as to which one I think is the better book, is in like DeLillo's best book. But this book really is a banger. It is a real masterpiece, and I mean that in earnest. So yeah, it's going to get an A from me. So White Noise by Don DeLillo. Have you read White Noise? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I've said about it here today. And if you haven't read White Noise, I could definitely recommend picking this up if you want to get into Don DeLillo and give his work a go. This is probably the most successful, or one of the most successful, at least, examples of it. This is him doing what Don DeLillo does at his best, I would say. So yeah, it's definitely one of the harder recommends for me from the DeLillo catalog, because I think it's a great book. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.